Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise.
I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in the first public housing project for black people in this country. I lived in a very segregated society. And I remember trips on the streetcar with my mother. And we sat in the back where blacks were legally assigned to sit. And my mother would constantly remind us that, my brothers and I, that while we were sitting in the back, it had nothing to do with our value and how we should think of ourselves, that those sitting in the back, we were just as good as the white people sitting in the front. And I listened to that conversation many times and decided that when I grew up, when I was educated, that I would take special interest in erasing that racial divide that had defined my life.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see.
Alex de Tocqueville, many, many years ago, in the early beginnings of this country, did a study. And one of the features of this study was the importance that Americans put on volunteerism. And that has been true down through the years for this country, to the envy of all other countries in the world. Most volunteerism and most philanthropy in other countries is government sponsored. But for us, as de Tocqueville found, volunteerism is a huge part of the American psyche and the American experience.
All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free.
The lawyers that I've been privileged to work with since I came out of law school in 1960, I think for the most part, they are unsung, unheralded, unappreciated, unknown disturbers of the unjust peace. And they have made a huge difference for people individually, people as a group, and for the country as a whole. When we tried the James Fair case that I talked to you about, it was in a little small town called Reedsville, Georgia, Tatnall County. And we had to sleep in a colored motel 30 miles away in Dublin, Georgia. And every day of court, start about 8:30, break for lunch at 11:30. The white court officials, the judge, the state's attorneys, the bailiff, would all go across the street to the only cafe in town, which was white only. It was summer of 1960. And Donald Hollowell and Shaveen Bowers King, the only lawyers south of Atlanta at the time, in Albany, Georgia, and myself, would go to the local grocery store, the only grocery store in Reedsville, and we would get a pound of bologna, a loaf of bread, a jar of mustard, a Coca-Cola, and a Baby Ruth, and we would sit in Hollowell's car and we would eat it. We did that on Monday, we did that on Tuesday. On Wednesday, a black woman sitting upstairs in the courthouse where black people were restricted to sit, dropped a book. I was a flunky lawyer. I turned around. She invited me to come down to the vestibule of the courtroom, and she said to me, "Lawyer, We've been watching you all eat those bologna sandwiches for 2 days now. Don't do it today. Just have a soda and then come to my house when court ends. And court was over at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and so we did that. 10 other ladies were there with aprons and their nice sundresses, and their husbands had come home and put on fresh shirts and trousers. And it was one of the best meals I've ever had. It was their best silver, their best linen, their best crystal, their best dishes, and Southern cuisine, the likes of which you've never seen or eaten before. But what I remember most about that was a line in the prayer that the woman's husband gave as we held hands around the table. He said, "Lord, way down here in Tatnall County, we can't join the NAACP, but thanks to your bountiful blessings, we can feed the NAACP lawyers." That meal was one of the best fees I've ever received.
Blackbird fly into the light of the dark black night.
I would hope that every lawyer in this country, at some point in their practice, especially on the volunteer side, would have the opportunity at some point to tell a story like my story in Tatnall County, where they, because of their volunteerism, were paid not in dollars, but in appreciation for their work. I cannot think of any better fee.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise.
I'd like to congratulate Samara for 100 years of service, the oldest legal aid in the state of Minnesota. And despite your long years of service to the community, it's clear to me that your work is still unfinished. And I wish you well.
You were only waiting for this moment to arise.